February 18th, 1820. A crowd gathers outside the old city jail in Charleston, South Carolina. Thousands of people have come to watch. At the center of it all stands a young woman. She is only in her 20s. Her name is Lavinia Fisher. For generations, she would be remembered as America's first female serial killer. Tour guides would tell stories about poisoned tea, hidden trapdoors, travelers disappearing into the night, and bodies that were never found. It's a story that sounds almost too perfect. A beautiful innkeeper, a deadly secret, an isolated roadside inn, a string of unsuspecting victims. But here's the question. What if one of America's most famous true crime stories isn't actually true? What if the woman remembered as a ruthless serial killer was never convicted of murder at all? Today, we're diving into one of the most fascinating cases in American criminal history. A story where legend and fact have become tangled together for more than 200 years. And by the end, you'll have to decide for yourself. Was Lavinia Fisher a monster, or did history create one? To understand this story, we need to travel back to the early 1800s. America was still young, the nation was expanding, road travel was slow, dangerous, and often lonely. Long-distance travelers depended on inns and taverns for food, shelter, and protection. If you were traveling through South Carolina in the early 19th century, there were no highways, no police patrols, no emergency services, no cell phones. If someone vanished on the road, they could disappear forever. Charleston was one of the most important cities in the South. Trade flowed through its ports, merchants traveled constantly, money moved along dusty roads, and wherever money travels, crime usually follows. The countryside surrounding Charleston had a reputation for bandit activity. Highway robbery was a serious concern. In fact, authorities treated highway robbery so severely that it could carry the death penalty. That fact becomes extremely important later, because many people assume Lavinia Fisher was executed for murder. Historically, she wasn't. Lavinia and her husband, John Fisher, lived near Charleston and operated a property known as the 6 Mile Wayfarer House. The name came from its location, approximately 6 miles north of Charleston. Over time, rumors began circulating. Travelers were allegedly disappearing. Locals whispered about criminal activity. But rumors alone weren't enough. Authorities needed evidence, and evidence was hard to come by in the early 19th century. This is where history starts blending into folklore. According to the traditional legend, Lavinia Fisher had a method. She would welcome travelers into the inn. She would talk with them, learn about their occupations, try to determine whether they had money. Then came the tea. The story says she offered guests poisoned tea before bedtime. Afterward, John Fisher supposedly attacked the victims and robbed them. Another version became even more dramatic. According to that tale, the tea didn't kill anyone. Instead, it made victims sleepy. Once they drifted off, a hidden mechanism would cause the bed to collapse. The traveler would plunge into a pit below. It's the kind of story that practically writes itself. Dark, creepy, memorable. The problem is, historians have struggled to verify many of these details. Over the years, the story grew larger. Each retelling added new layers, and separating fact from fiction became increasingly difficult. What we do know is that contemporary accounts described criminal gang activity in the region. According to reports from the period, a group of vigilantes attempted to disrupt a gang operating in the area. Believing their work was done, they returned to Charleston. But they left behind a young man named David Ross to keep watch. The next morning, Ross was allegedly attacked. He was dragged before members of the gang. According to the account, Lavinia Fisher was present. Ross later claimed she participated in the assault rather than helping him. Remarkably, he escaped. and once free, he alerted authorities. That alone would have been significant, but another story soon emerged. A traveler named John Peoples reportedly arrived seeking a room. He was offered tea. Unlike many guests, he didn't drink it. Instead, he secretly disposed of it. Then something happened that made him suspicious. He said he was questioned for hours. Eventually, he was given a room. But rather than sleeping in the bed, he chose to sleep in a chair near the door. During the night, he awoke to a loud crash. According to the story, the bed collapsed. Peoples fled and rode to Charleston to report what had happened. Whether every detail is accurate remains uncertain. But these accounts finally gave authorities something they had previously lacked: names, specific suspects, specific accusations. Law enforcement moved quickly. Police investigated the area. Several alleged gang members were identified. Among them were Lavinia Fisher and her husband. John Fisher eventually surrendered. During questioning, he reportedly attempted to shield his wife from blame. But the arrests had already happened. The legal process was now underway. This is where the story becomes truly fascinating, because the investigation tells us as much about early America as it does about the Fishers themselves. Today, criminal investigations rely on forensic science: DNA, fingerprints, digital evidence, surveillance footage. In 1819, none of that existed. Investigators depended heavily on witness testimony, confessions, reputation, community knowledge, and sometimes rumor. That's an uncomfortable reality. Many criminal cases during this period were built on evidence standards that would never survive modern scrutiny. When we examine the Fisher case, another issue appears. The public was already primed to believe the worst. Reports of missing travelers had circulated for years. Stories spread quickly, and once a suspect is linked to an existing fear, people often connect every unsolved mystery to that suspect. It's a pattern we still see today. Another factor was gender. The image of a female criminal fascinated 19th century audiences. Women were expected to embody virtue, morality, and domestic stability. When a woman violated those expectations, public interest exploded. A male robber was a criminal. A female robber became a sensation. The more shocking the story, the longer it survived. And that may help explain why Lavinia Fisher became so famous. The legend transformed her from a convicted robber into something much larger: a female serial killer, an innkeeper assassin, a southern ghost story, a cautionary tale. But here's the critical historical point. The evidence for serial murder remains highly disputed. Modern historians have increasingly questioned whether Lavinia Fisher killed anyone at all. What they do agree on is that she was associated with criminal activity and a gang of highwaymen operating near Charleston. That distinction matters a lot, because history should separate what can be proven from what merely sounds compelling. The legal proceedings also reveal how harsh the era could be. The Fishers pleaded not guilty. A jury rejected their claims. They were convicted of highway robbery, not murder. Highway robbery itself was considered a capital offense, meaning the punishment could be death. The case then moved through appeals. Months passed. Nearly a year separated arrest and execution. During that time, the Fishers even attempted an escape. The plan was daring. Using a rope made from prison linens, they tried to flee from their jail cell. But the rope failed. John briefly gained freedom. Lavinia remained trapped. Rather than abandoning her, John stayed nearby and was recaptured. Security tightened afterward. Eventually, the appeals process ended. The courts upheld the sentence. Execution would proceed. On February 4th, 1820, the final sentence was handed down. Both John and Lavinia Fisher would be hanged. Their final days revealed very different reactions. John Fisher accepted religious counsel from Reverend Richard Furman. Lavinia reportedly became increasingly hostile toward those around her. When execution day arrived, a large crowd gathered. Public executions were major events in early America. They served as punishment, but also spectacle. John maintained his innocence. He even prepared a statement expressing that position. Yet the crowd had largely made up its mind. The Fishers were already infamous, and infamous people rarely control their own narratives. Then came the moment that would define Lavinia Fisher's legend forever. According to popular accounts, she requested to wear her wedding dress. And before her execution, she allegedly delivered a chilling line. "If you have a message you want to send to hell, give it to me. I'll carry it, whether remembered exactly or not." The quote became immortal. It transformed an execution into folklore. Decades passed, then a century, then two. The story only grew. Ghost stories emerged around Charleston's old city jail. Visitors claimed strange sightings, unusual sounds, mysterious figures. Many insisted they had seen a woman in a wedding dress, and gradually Lavinia Fisher evolved from a historical figure into a supernatural icon. Today, her name remains famous, not because historians agree on her crimes, but because the uncertainty itself is compelling. Her story sits at the intersection of crime, myth, folklore, and historical memory. It's a reminder that history isn't just about what happened, it's also about what people choose to remember. And sometimes, those are very different things. 200 years later, the debate continues. Was Lavinia Fisher truly America's first female serial killer? Or was she a highway robber whose story expanded with every generation that retold it? That's the mystery, and that's why we're still talking about her today. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of America's most controversial true crime legends, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future episodes. And now I want to hear from you. Do you think Lavinia Fisher was a serial killer? Or do you think history transformed a criminal into a legend? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious.